I never thought a single piece of yellowed paper could change everything. But as I sit here today, in my glass-walled penthouse office overlooking the city skyline, I can trace every moment of my transformation back to that crumpled bank statement I found in my grandfather's old tobacco tin. My name is Elena, and this is the story of how I went from being called just a farmer's daughter to becoming the woman who owns half the buildings my ex-husband used to brag about. Number Chapter 1. The perfect life that wasn't 3 years ago. I thought I was living a fairy tale. Married to Richard Blackstone, one of the city's most successful real estate developers, living in his magnificent Tudor-style mansion in the hills, wearing designer dresses to charity galas where everyone called me Mrs. Blackstone, with that particular smile reserved for trophy wives. I had met Richard during my final semester at the State University, where I was studying agriculture business. He was there as a guest speaker, talking about agricultural land development opportunities. I was just Elena Martinez then, a girl from a small farming town 3 hours away, wearing my grandmother's pearl earrings and a dress I'd bought from the clearance rack. After his presentation, he approached me. "You asked intelligent questions," he said, his gray eyes studying me with interest. "Most people in this room are just thinking about money, but you are thinking about the land itself." Within 6 months, we were married. Looking back, I realize how quickly everything moved, how Richard seemed to sweep me off my feet before I had time to think. "You don't need to finish your degree," he told me the week before our wedding. "I'll take care of everything. You'll never have to worry about money again." And for 3 years, I didn't worry about money, but I should have worried about everything else. Richard's love came with conditions I didn't recognize at first. "Elena, darling, maybe don't mention the farming thing tonight," he'd whisper before parties. "People here might not understand." Or, "Sweetheart, I hired a decorator. Your rustic taste is charming, but this house needs a more sophisticated touch." Slowly, systematically, he erased Elena Martinez and replaced her with Mrs. Richard Blackstone Fay, a quiet, beautiful accessory who smiled at the right moments and never contradicted her husband in public. I threw myself into being the perfect wife. I learned to arrange flowers, to host dinner parties, to make small talk about art and wine. I joined the country club, volunteered for the right charities, and never once mentioned that I missed the smell of earth after rain, or the satisfaction of watching seeds become something beautiful and useful. But Richard was changing too. The man who had once been charmed by my authentic perspective increasingly saw it as an embarrassment. His business grew, his circle became more exclusive, and I felt myself becoming more and more invisible in my own life. "You are so lucky," the other wives would tell me at luncheons. "Richard just adores you. He takes such good care of you." They were right about one thing. Richard did take care of everything. I had credit cards in my name, but he managed all the finances. I had a beautiful home, but the deed was in his name. I had a car, jewelry, clothes, but slowly I realized I had nothing that was actually mine. The first crack in my perfect life appeared on a Tuesday morning in October. I was arranging white roses in the front hall when Richard came down the stairs, adjusting his tie with one hand and scrolling through his phone with the other. "I'll be late tonight," he said without looking up. "Business dinner." "With whom?" I asked casually, not because I was suspicious, but because I was trying to remember if I should prepare something for his associates' wives. Richard's hand stilled on his tie. For just a moment, his eyes flickered with something that looked like guilt. "Just investors. No one you know." That night, I stayed awake until 2 a.m. When Richard finally came home, I smelled perfume Fay, not mine Fay, and noticed a lipstick stain on his collar that he'd tried to wipe away but missed. I didn't say anything. Perfect wives didn't accuse their husbands based on lipstick stains. But I started noticing things. Late night phone calls he took in his study with the door closed. Business trips that seemed to coincide with weekends. The way he'd become irritated when I asked simple questions about his day. "Elena, you wouldn't understand the complexities of my business," he'd say with that patient tone people use with children. "Just focus on what you do best, Fane, making our home beautiful." 6 months later, the second crack appeared, and this one was impossible to ignore. Number Chapter 2. The unraveling. I was cleaning out Richard's study while he was on another business trip to Chicago. He'd been increasingly messy lately, leaving papers scattered across his desk. and I thought I'd surprise him by organizing everything. That is when I found the photograph. It was tucked inside a real estate magazine, and at first I thought it had fallen there by accident, but when I looked closer, I recognized the woman immediately, Vivian Chase, the striking blonde from Richard's office, who handled special client relations. In the photo, she was laughing at something off camera, her head tilted back, wearing a necklace I'd never seen before. What made my hands shake wasn't just finding the photo, it was the handwriting on the back, "To my darling Richard, until we can stop pretending, all my love. V." I sat in Richard's leather chair, staring at the photograph, feeling like I was watching my life from the outside. 3 years of marriage. 3 years of trying to be perfect, and he'd been in love with someone else. That night when Richard returned from Chicago, I was waiting for him in the living room. "We need to talk," I said simply. He took one look at my face and knew. For a moment his mask slipped, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Fear. "Elena, it is not what you think, it is exactly what I think." I placed the photograph on the coffee table between us. "How long?" Richard ran his hands through his hair, and suddenly he looked older, more tired. "Elena, you have to understand. Vivian and I, we work together, we understand each other's world. It just happened." "How long?" Richard. 2 years. 2 years. Most of our marriage had been a lie, but what happened next surprised both of us. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. Instead, I felt something cold and clear settle in my chest. "What do you want to do?" I asked. Richard's relief was visible. He'd expected hysterics, and instead, I was being reasonable. "Elena, you are an amazing woman. You deserve someone who can love you the way you deserve. We can make this civilized, clean. You want a divorce. I think it is best for both of us." I nodded slowly. "I'll need to call a lawyer." Actually, Richard's voice took on that careful tone I'd learned to recognize. "I've already consulted with mine, just to understand our options. Given that most of our assets were acquired during the marriage through my business, and considering that you didn't contribute financially," the words hit me like physical blows. "You want me to leave with nothing." "Not nothing, Elena. I am prepared to be generous. I'll give you enough to get started somewhere new. Maybe back home with your family. Back home, back to the small town I'd left. Back to being the girl who'd married above her station and couldn't make it work." "The house," I began, "was mine before we married. The mortgage is in my name, the cars, leased through my company, the joint accounts." Richard's expression didn't change, but I saw the truth in his eyes. "There are no joint accounts, are there?" I whispered. "Elena, you never wanted to deal with financial matters, you said you trusted me to handle everything." And I had. I'd trusted him completely, and in doing so, I'd made myself completely vulnerable. That night, I called my sister Maria back home. "He is throwing me away," I told her, trying to keep my voice steady. 3 years, Maria, I gave him 3 years, and I have nothing to show for it. "Come home," Maria said immediately. "We'll figure this out." But I couldn't. Not yet. The girl who'd left the farm to marry Richard Blackstone couldn't come home empty-handed, defeated. I needed time to think, to plan, to figure out who Elena Martinez was. When she wasn't trying to be Mrs. Richard Blackstone, I spent the next 3 weeks in a sort of limbo. Richard moved into the guest room and spent most of his time at the office, or working late. I knew he was with Vivian, planning their future while I tried to figure out if I had one. The divorce papers arrived on a Friday. Richard's lawyer had drawn up an agreement that gave me $50,000 fee generous alimony for someone who'd contributed nothing to the marriage fee and 30 days to vacate the house. I read through the papers 3 times, each reading making me feel smaller and more invisible. According to these documents, my 3 years of marriage, of trying to be the perfect wife, of giving up my own dreams and ambitions, were worth exactly $50,000. That night, I called my parents. "Mija," my father said, his voice heavy with concern, "you come home. We take care of you." "I know, Papa, but first, I need to go through Abuelo's things. The ones you stored in the barn after he died. There might be some papers I need." My grandfather, Carlos Martinez, had died 5 years earlier. He'd been the one who taught me to love the land, who'd shown me how to read soil and weather, who'd filled my childhood with stories about our family's history in this country. Why you want to go through that old stuff now? My mother asked. I need to understand where I came from before I can figure out where I am going. Number Chapter 3. The drive to my parents' farm took 3 hours, and with every mile, I felt like I was traveling backward through time. The landscape changed from urban sprawl to suburbs to small towns to rolling farmland dotted with oak trees and cattle. My parents' house looked exactly the same, a white farmhouse with a wraparound porch. My mother's flower gardens blooming despite the November chill. My father's workshop still organized with the precision of a man who'd spent 40 years fixing things. You look thin, my mother said the moment I stepped out of the car, and too pale. That city life, it is not healthy. She was probably right. I'd spent 3 years in climate-controlled environments, eating at restaurants where portion control was an art form. I'd forgotten what my mother's cooking tasted like, or how the air smelled different here. The barn where my grandfather's belongings were stored sat behind the house-weathered gray wood that had housed 3 generations of farm equipment. My father had cleared out one corner after Abuelo died, stacking boxes and furniture covered with old sheets. Take your time, Mija, he said, installing a space heater and extension cord for light. Your grandfather, he kept everything. Mama used to tease him about being a pack rat, but he always said, you never know what might be important someday. I spent the first day just sorting through boxes, remembering Abuelo's reading glasses, his collection of farming journals dating back to the 1960s, photo albums filled with pictures of family members I barely remembered. On the second day, I found the tobacco tin. It was an old Prince Albert pipe tobacco container, the kind with a hinged lid and faded lettering. I recognized it immediately. Abuelo used to keep his important papers in various tins like this. As a child, I'd been fascinated by his collection of containers, each holding different treasures. This one was tucked into a cardboard box with other miscellany, old letters, newspaper clippings, receipts. When I opened it, the first thing I saw was my birth certificate, along with my parents' marriage license and some land deeds I assumed were for the family property. But underneath, folded small and yellowed with age, was a bank statement. At first, I almost threw it away. It was from 1985, from a bank I'd never heard of, First Farmers Trust of Texas. The account holder was listed as Carlos Martinez, in trust for Elena Martinez. My hands started shaking as I read the numbers. The statement showed a balance of $47,892.33, which seemed like a fortune to my 25-year-old grandfather in 1985, but wasn't life-changing money now. But this statement was from 1985, 38 years ago. I stared at the paper, my mind racing. If this account still existed, if it had been earning interest for nearly 4 decades, my phone barely had signal in the barn, but I managed to search for First Farmers Trust of Texas. The bank still existed, though it had been acquired by a larger institution in the 1990s. According to their website, they honored all legacy accounts and safe deposit boxes. I called the customer service number with trembling fingers. First Farmers Trust, this is Jennifer. How can I help you? I found an old bank statement in my grandfather's belongings. From 1985, I am wondering if the account might still exist. I can check that for you. Do you have the account number? I read off the long string of numbers, spelling out my grandfather's name and mine. There was a pause, then the clicking of computer keys. Miss Martinez, I am going to transfer you to our estate services department. Please hold. Another pause, more clicking, then a new voice. Miss Martinez, this is Robert Chen, Senior Account Manager. I understand you are inquiring about a legacy trust account established by Carlos Martinez. Yes, sir, he was my grandfather. He passed away 5 years ago. I see, and you have identification proving you are Elena Martinez, the designated beneficiary. Yes, I do. Miss Martinez, I think you should come in person to discuss this account. When would be convenient for you? There was something in his tone, carefully controlled excitement. Maybe that made my heart pound. Is there still money in the account? A pause. Miss Martinez, there is quite a lot to discuss. Can you come in tomorrow? Number Chapter 4. The Revelation. First Farmers Trust occupied a modest brick building in a small town 40 minutes from my parents' farm. It looked like the kind of bank that had weathered every economic storm for the past century, solid and unpretentious. Robert Chen turned out to be a middle-aged Asian man in a conservative suit, the kind of banker who probably knew every account holder's family history. He met me in the lobby with a manila folder thick enough to choke a horse. "Miss Martinez," he said, shaking my hand, "I have to admit, we've been wondering about this account for years. Your grandfather was, well, he was quite remarkable." He led me to a small conference room, with wood paneling and portraits of long-dead bank presidents. "Before we begin," he said, "I need to verify your identity and your grandfather's death certificate." I handed over my driver's license, birth certificate, and the official death certificate my parents had given me. He examined each document carefully, comparing signatures and cross-referencing dates. "Perfect. Now, let me explain what your grandfather established here." He opened the folder, revealing documents that went back decades. "In 1983, your grandfather opened what we call a Generation Trust account. It was a new product then designed for farmers and ranchers who wanted to leave something for their grandchildren's generation. The account was structured to remain untouched until you either turned 30 or experienced what the documents define as exceptional financial hardship requiring emergency access. My 28th birthday was still 2 months away, but my current situation definitely qualified as exceptional financial hardship. Your grandfather made deposits into this account for 3 years, from 1983 to 1985, then he stopped making deposits, but he never closed the account. The trust agreement he signed specified that the money should remain invested in a conservative portfolio: FAE CDs, government bonds, blue chip stocks." Robert opened to a page covered with numbers and handed it to me. "Miss Martinez, your current balance, as of yesterday's close, is $2,847,329.73. The room went silent. I stared at the numbers, trying to process what I was seeing. $2,847,329.73. "I am sorry," I whispered. "Could you repeat that?" $2.8 million approximately. Your grandfather invested $50,000 over 3 years, and it has been compounding for 38 years. I couldn't breathe. That is impossible. It is really quite simple compound interest, plus some very good stock picks. Your grandfather chose to invest in what were then small companies: Walmart, Microsoft, Apple. The original shares have split multiple times." Robert turned to another page, "But that is not all. Your grandfather also purchased mineral rights to several pieces of property in East Texas in the 1980s. At the time, they were considered speculative investments, worth maybe $5,000 total." He handed me another document. "Last year, a natural gas company approached us about leasing those mineral rights. The geological surveys show significant reserves. The lease payment alone was $400,000, and if they begin extraction, you'll receive royalty payments of approximately $50,000 per month." I was staring at the documents, but the words weren't making sense. $50,000 per month. Conservatively, if the reserves are as large as they believe, it could be considerably more. I thought about Richard's generous offer of $50,000 to walk away from our marriage. My grandfather's foresight had just given me more than that every month for the foreseeable future. "There is one more thing," Robert said gently. "Your grandfather left detailed instructions about what he wanted you to do with this money if you ever needed to access it before 30. He handed me an envelope with my name written in Abuelo's careful handwriting. Inside was a letter dated just 2 months before his death. Me dearest Elena, *face if you are reading this, it means life has brought you to a place where you need help, and I am no longer there to provide it myself. This troubles me, but it does not surprise me. I have watched you grow into a smart, strong woman, but I know the world can be cruel to smart, strong women, especially ones who come from families like ours. Men with money will try to make you forget your worth. They will try to convince you that you need them to survive. Fate, this money is your reminder that you never need to depend on anyone who does not respect you. Use it wisely. Build something that cannot be taken from you. And remember, the land never lies, but people often do. Your grandfather Carlos knew you would be special from the day you were born. Trust yourself, Mija. You have everything you need. Asterisk fe con amor. Asterisk fe abuelo fe. By the time I finished reading, I was crying fe not tears of sadness, but of overwhelming gratitude and love, for a man who had seen this possibility, and prepared for it decades before it happened. The account can be fully transferred to your name within 48 hours. Robert said quietly. Is there anything else you need to know? Yes, there was something else I needed to know. Mr. Chen, I said, wiping my eyes and straightening my shoulders. What is the largest real estate investment loan your bank has ever approved? Number Chapter 5. The transformation. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, accountants, and investment advisors. I didn't return to Richard's house immediately. Instead, I rented a small apartment in the city under my maiden name and began the work of becoming Elena Martinez, again Faye, but a version of Elena Martinez, who had $2.8 million and rapidly growing monthly royalty checks. The first thing I did was hire the best divorce attorney in the state, not the overworked public defender I'd originally planned to call. Margaret Stern was a woman in her 50s who specialized in high net worth divorces, and had a reputation for being absolutely ruthless when protecting her clients. Interesting situation, she said after reviewing Richard's proposed settlement. Your husband's lawyer is operating under the assumption that you are desperate and have no resources to fight back. That is what I wanted him to think, Margaret smiled. Smart girl. Now, let's talk strategy. The second thing I did was visit the office of Martinez Property Development Faye, a company I registered and funded in the same week I learned about my inheritance. I rented a sleek office in the financial district, hired 2 experienced commercial real estate agents, and began making strategic investments. Richard thought I was hiding in shame, licking my wounds. In reality, I was building an empire. I started by purchasing 3 apartment buildings that Richard's company had been trying to acquire for over a year. The owners had refused to sell to him because they felt his development plans would destroy the neighborhood character. When Elena Martinez approached them with plans to renovate and preserve the building's historical features while improving living conditions for tenants, they were much more receptive. The third building I purchased was the one that housed Richard's office. Ma'am, I think there might be some conflict of interest issues. My lawyer warned me, buying your husband's office building while you are in the middle of a divorce is perfectly legal as long as I honor his existing lease terms. I finished, which I absolutely will. I am a fair landlady. By the time Richard realized what was happening, I owned more prime real estate in the city than his company did. But I wasn't finished. The 4th week after my discovery, I received a call from Richard's lawyer. Mrs. Blackstone, my client would like to discuss amending the divorce settlement. I am listening. He is prepared to offer you $200,000 and 18 months to vacate the house, considering the emotional distress this situation has caused. 4 times his original offer. He was getting worried. Please tell Mr. Blackstone that I appreciate his concern, but I've decided I don't want his money. A pause. I am sorry, what? I don't want his money, any of it. I'll be filing my own settlement proposal by the end of the week. I could hear the lawyer conferring with someone else. Faye, Richard, probably. Mrs. Blackstone, surely you understand that without financial support, your situation will be quite difficult. I appreciate your concern, but I think I'll manage just fine. That weekend, Richard appeared at my apartment. He looked terrible, Faye, thinner, tired, with the kind of stress lines around his eyes that come from sleepless nights. I almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Elena, he said when I opened the door. We need to talk. I agree, come in. My apartment was small, but elegant, furnished with a few carefully chosen pieces that reflected my taste, not someone else's idea of sophistication. Richard looked around like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. You look different, he said. I was different. I'd cut my hair shorter, bought clothes that fit my body instead of hiding it. Stopped wearing the excessive makeup Richard had always preferred. I looked like myself again. I hear you've been buying real estate, Richard said, settling into the chair across from mine. A little. Elena, what is going on? 3 weeks ago, you were worried about having enough money for a lawyer. Now my contacts are telling me you are making cash offers on properties my company has been pursuing for months. I looked at him calmly. I found some resources I didn't know I had. What kind of resources? The kind that make me realize I don't need your generous settlement offer. Richard leaned forward, his hands clasped. Elena, I know I hurt you. I know this whole situation has been painful. But we both want the same thing, Faye, to end this marriage amicably and move forward with our lives. Do we want the same thing, Richard? Of course we do. What I want, I said quietly, is for my husband to stop lying to me. Richard's face went pale. I haven't. You've been lying for 2 years, about Vivian, about your business trips, about the extent of your assets, about your plans for our marriage. I stood up and walked to the window, but the lie that bothers me most is the one you told yourself. What do you mean? I turned back to face him. You convinced yourself that I was nothing without you, that I brought nothing to our marriage except a pretty face and a willingness to be grateful. Elena, that is not. You were wrong. The words hung in the air between us. I am not the helpless little farm girl you married, Richard. I never was. You just made me believe I was because it was easier for you to control someone who felt dependent on your generosity. Richard stood up, his composure cracking. What do you want, Elena? Money, fine. Name your price. You want half the assets, I'll consider it. Just tell me what this is really about. This isn't about money. Then what? This is about respect. Number Chapter 6. The Reckoning. The divorce hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning in December. I arrived at the courthouse wearing a navy blue suit that cost more than my entire wardrobe had 6 months earlier, carrying a briefcase, and accompanied by Margaret Stern and a team of associates. Richard was waiting in the hallway with his lawyer and Vivian. She looked nervous, dressed in an outfit clearly meant to impress the judge with her professionalism and respectability. When Richard saw me, his face went through a series of expressions: surprise, confusion, and something that might have been fear. Elena, he said, approaching me. You look successful. Thank you. Listen, before we go in there, maybe we can still work something out privately. I don't think so, Richard. Elena, please. I know you are angry and you have every right to be, but dragging this through court isn't going to help either of us. Margaret Stern stepped forward. Mr. Blackstone, if you want to discuss settlement terms, you can speak with me. My client has made her position very clear. What position is that? She wants the truth, all of it, complete financial disclosure, complete honesty about the timeline of your relationship with Miss Chase, an acknowledgement of her contributions to your marriage and business success. Richard's lawyer whispered something urgent in his ear. Elena, Richard said, you know I can't do that. It would be complicated. Complicated how? Another urgent whisper from his lawyer. That is when I knew. There is something else, isn't there? I said quietly, something you haven't told me. Richard's face confirmed it. We entered the courtroom, and the hearing began with routine motions and procedural matters. But when it came time for financial disclosure, things got interesting. Your Honor, Margaret said, we've discovered some discrepancies in the defendant's financial statements that we'd like to address. She opened a folder and began distributing documents to the judge and opposing counsel. Mr. Blackstone has claimed that his company Blackstone Development is the source of the majority of marital assets. However, our investigation shows that several of his most profitable projects were actually purchased using funds from a shell company called RB Holdings. Richard's lawyer objected, but the judge allowed Margaret to continue. RB Holdings, Your Honor, is owned by Miss Vivian Chase. Miss Chase has been providing funding for Mr. Blackstone's projects for over 2 years, in exchange for a percentage of profits and other considerations. The judge looked up sharply. Other considerations. Mr. Blackstone has been operating essentially as Miss Chase's kept man, Your Honor. She has been funding his lifestyle and his business in exchange for their relationship and his promise to divorce his wife. The courtroom erupted. Richard jumped to his feet, his face red with anger and embarrassment. That is not true. That is a complete mischaracterization. Mr. Blackstone, the judge said firmly, sit down. Margaret continued, furthermore, Your Honor, Mr. Blackstone has significantly undervalued his assets in his financial disclosure. The properties he claims are worth $2.3 million have recently been appraised at over $4 million. She handed over another set of documents, and finally, Your Honor, Mr. Blackstone has failed to disclose that he is currently under investigation by the IRS for tax evasion related to unreported income from his arrangement with Miss Chase. The room went completely silent. I looked at Richard, who had collapsed back into his chair. 3 years of marriage, and I'd never seen him look so small. Your Honor, his lawyer said weakly, we'd like to request a recess to review these allegations. I'll grant a 30-minute recess, the judge said. But Mr. Blackstone, I want complete financial disclosure when we return, complete and honest. During the break, Richard approached me in the hallway. Vivian was nowhere to be seen. How? He asked simply. How what? How did you find out about the arrangement with Vivian? How did you afford lawyers who could dig this deep? How did you? He gestured helplessly at my composed demeanor, my expensive clothes, my obvious comfort with the legal proceedings. I had help. From who? I thought about my grandfather, about the letter he'd left me, about 38 years of compound interest and faith in my ability to handle whatever life brought me. Someone who loved me. When court resumed, Richard's lawyer announced that his client was prepared to accept whatever settlement the judge deemed fair. With no contest, the judge awarded me half of all marital assets, the real half, based on honest appraisals. But I didn't want Richard's money or his properties. I wanted something else. Your Honor, I said, standing up, I'd like to make a statement. The judge nodded. I turned to look at Richard directly. 3 years ago, you told me I was lucky to have found someone to take care of me. You made me believe that I was nothing without you, that I should be grateful for whatever you were willing to give me. My voice was steady, clear. You were wrong. I never needed you to take care of me. What I needed was someone who could see my worth and respect it. You couldn't do that. So our marriage was over long before you started sleeping with someone else. I paused, letting the words settle. I don't want your house. I don't want your money. I don't want anything that belongs to you. What I want is for you to understand that you didn't lose me because you made a mistake. You lost me because you never valued what you had in the first place. I turned back to the judge. Your Honor, I'd like to donate my share of the marital assets to the Family Legal Aid Society to help other women who find themselves in situations like the one I thought I was in. The judge raised his eyebrows. Are you certain, Mrs. Martinez? I noticed he used my maiden name. I am certain, Your Honor. Very well. The divorce is granted. Mrs. Martinez, you are free to go. As I walked out of the courtroom, I heard Richard call my name one last time. Elena, wait. I stopped but didn't turn around. I am sorry, he said quietly. I am sorry for all of it. I looked back at him, this man who had once seemed so powerful, so sophisticated, so far above me, he looked old and tired and small. I know you are, Richard, but sorry doesn't change anything. It never did. Number Chapter 7. The New Beginning. 6 months later, I was standing in the executive conference room of Martinez Property Development, looking out at a view of the city that rivaled any penthouse office. My company had grown to 12 employees, and we'd just closed our biggest deal yet, a sustainable housing development that would provide affordable homes for working families while preserving the natural landscape. My phone buzzed with a text from my sister. Saw the article about you in Business Weekly. Mama cried happy tears. The article was titled, From Farm Girl to Real Estate Mogul, the Elena Martinez Success Story. The journalist had been fascinated by my rapid rise in the industry, but I'd been careful not to reveal too much about the source of my initial capital. That was a private gift from my grandfather, and I intended to honor it by using it wisely. My assistant knocked on the door. Miss Martinez, your 3 o'clock appointment is here. Send them in. A young woman entered, mid-20s, nervous, wearing a dress that was clearly her best but not expensive. She reminded me of someone I used to know. Miss Martinez, I am Sarah Collins. I called about the mentorship program? I gestured for her to sit down. Sarah was one of 10 participants in a program I'd started to help young women from rural backgrounds transition into business careers in the city. I provided scholarships, internships, and most importantly, the kind of guidance I wished I'd had when I first arrived here. Tell me about your background, Sarah. I grew up on a dairy farm in Montana. I just graduated with a degree in business, but I feel so out of place here, like everyone else knows things I don't know. I smiled. What kind of things? How to talk to important people, how to dress for success, how to make people take you seriously when you sound like you are from the middle of nowhere. Sarah, I said gently, let me tell you something. The most successful business decision I ever made came from understanding land and agriculture. Things I learned growing up on a farm. Your background isn't a limitation, it is an asset. But the people I am competing with, they went to fancy schools, they have connections. And you have something they don't have. You understand what it means to work hard for everything you get. You understand the value of things because you've seen what happens when they're scarce. And you understand that success isn't just about making money. It is about building something that lasts. Sarah's eyes lit up. Really? Really now, let's talk about what you want to build. After Sarah left, I walked back to the window. The city stretched out below me, full of opportunities and challenges, dreams and disappointments. Somewhere out there, Richard was trying to rebuild his business and his reputation. The IRS investigation had been resolved with a hefty fine, and some very unflattering publicity. But he was surviving. I heard through the business grapevine that he and Vivian had broken up. Apparently she wasn't interested in supporting a man whose empire was crumbling. I didn't take any satisfaction in his struggles. What had happened between us wasn't about revenge or punishment, it was about truth. And sometimes the truth has consequences that go far beyond what anyone intended. My phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. Elena, it is Mom. How are you, Mija? I am good, Mama, really good. Your father wants to know if you are coming home for Christmas. Home, the word meant something different now. The farm would always be where I came from. But this city, this office, this life I'd built, this was home too. Of course I am coming home. I want to visit Abuelo's grave and tell him how his gift changed my life. He would be so proud of you. I hope so. After I hung up, I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the old tobacco tin, where I now kept my most important documents. Inside, along with the deed to my office building, and the incorporation papers for my company, was my grandfather's letter. I read it again, as I did every few months, remembering his words, the land never lies, but people often do. He was right about people. They could be deceptive, cruel, selfish. But he was also right about something else. If you built something solid, something rooted in truth and hard work and respect for yourself, no one could take it away from you. I was Elena Martinez, and I had everything I needed. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. Tomorrow, I would wake up in my own apartment, go to my own office, make decisions about my own future. I would answer to no one but myself, depend on no one who didn't respect me, and remember every day that my worth wasn't determined by anyone else's opinion. 3 years ago, I thought I needed Richard Blackstone to give my life meaning. I was wrong about that too. But some mistakes teach you exactly what you need to know to never make them again. And some grandfathers love you enough to make sure you have options when life doesn't go according to plan. I locked the tobacco tin back in my desk drawer, picked up my purse, and headed home to the life I'd built for myself. It was a good life, it was mine. But did you like this story? Tell us in the comments which city you are listening from. If you enjoyed this dramatic tale of betrayal and resurrection, please support us with a super thanks so we can continue bringing you more incredible life stories like this one. Thank you so much for your support, we look forward to your comments about Elena's amazing journey. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that we highly recommend. There is so much more content on our channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect. ****